Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Naya Iman, and I'm just a girl who loves God, and I read a lot of books, and then I come and share the wisdom that he blesses me with. Today's video topic is actually going to be about thoughts versus thinking, which I know it may seem like an interesting concept because if you're anything like me, I was not aware that there was a difference between the two. But yeah, I just finished this great book. It's called Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph something. I don't know. I'll put it on the screen. I don't want to butcher his last name, but great book. Very short read, but very informative. So I'm just going to get into a little bit of what I've learned and then also share a little bit of my personal insight. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, first off, I just want to say that an open mind is a necessity when it comes to self-improvement, healing, and growth, because if you're stuck at a certain level of consciousness, you're not going to be able to progress. It's just not going to work. You cannot conceive what you're not the vibration of. So remember to give yourself room to learn and evolve and be free of the judgment of yourself, others, and reality. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I have some great news. Regardless of what you've convinced yourself of in the past, you are completely capable of experiencing peace, joy, love, and fulfillment in life, no matter the circumstance. And the reason I say this is because everything starts from within. And I know you might be thinking, well, I want this big house, a car, a watch, whatever. How is it possible for that to come from within? Well, physical manifestations are actually just a representation of your inner world. We chase certain worldly or physical things because of the need to feel something. We want money because we want to feel secure. We want a relationship because we want to feel loved or comforted. We want a watch or a boat or a house because we want to feel validated. Everything that we chase in life stems from our feelings. And wise words from the book that inspired this video: in order to find everything that you're seeking in life, you must first look within. Okay, don't hate me when I say this, but emotional and psychological suffering is a choice. And yes, I know that there are things that happen in life that are unfortunate and out of our control, but those things don't have to affect us if we don't let it. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering is a choice. And this is why I always say your perspective in life is so important, because it literally determines how you experience the world. For example, there could be two twins that grew up in the same environment and had majority of the same encounters, but those twins could have two completely different life experiences. The individual meaning that they attach to the things they saw growing up is the filter through which they experienced life. So in other words, reality is subjective. Everyone is living their own version of it. Reality is an event happening with no meaning or interpretation of it at all. Any mental or emotional significance we attach to it is completely on us. Like for instance, a tree falls on a house. That's a random event happening with no meaning, especially to somebody just riding past. But to the homeowner, it's the most horrific thing ever. The tree fell, but it affected these two people completely differently. So in other words, it's not what happens to us in life, but how we choose to think or feel about those events that determines if we suffer or not. So our feelings don't come from external events. It comes from the meanings that we attach to those events. That meaning is completely and solely our own. Someone else might go through the same thing we went through and attach a completely different meaning to it. This is how our experience of the world is created from the inside out. We don't live in reality. We live in our perception of reality. And what we think about specific events or occurrences in our lives determines how we feel. So we can only ever feel what we're thinking. And that brings us deeper into our topic of today's video. Your thinking is the root cause of your suffering. Now, when it comes to the mind and its purpose, it's more so concerned with helping you to survive than actually enjoy life, which might sound kind of crazy, but it's true. Your mind is interested solely in survival, not fulfillment or purpose or joy. It's responsible for analyzing potential threats and alerting you, which is amazing, obviously, and most likely the reason why we've survived this long in life. But there's a sort of a flaw to this feature. The mind, in its attempt to survive, also has a tendency to refer to knowledge that it has stored up. And whether it be from our own past experiences or other influences around us, it will sometimes take this knowledge that it has stored up and create hypothetical or imaginary scenarios to sort of predict what will happen. Now, the reason for this is to better assess any potential threats and make us aware. However, this has a tendency to cause anxiety because our body is experiencing these imaginary scenarios, even though they haven't and probably won't ever happen. It's just an illusion. It's our mind's job to keep us alive. But if we keep relying on our mind and our thinking, then we're going to be in a state of survival all the time, and that's really no way to live. And really, if it were up to the mind, it's going to consider everything to be a potential threat, whether it be emotionally, mentally, physically. It almost completely lives in fear 24/7. And over time, this affects how you show up in the world, the chances that you don't take, the opportunities you miss, all because your mind is deluding you into thinking that any and everything is unsafe. Imagine how this affects you on a daily basis. The mind can and will trick you out of the very purpose that God put you here to fulfill if you let it. That's why you have to trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding. In order to thrive, you have to tap into something deeper. Okay, so now that we've discussed the mind and thinking and how that affects us, let's discuss the difference between thoughts and thinking. Thoughts are automatic. They happen without us having to put any effort into producing them. They can be completely random, and sometimes they don't even come from us. Thoughts can sprout up from your subconscious mind, social media, God, Satan, the world, any influences around you, basically. However, thinking is a deliberate act and actually takes a significant amount of effort. Thinking is actively engaging in your thoughts, which you do not have to do. Some thoughts you can just let come and go. When you take it upon yourself to actually sit and dwell on the thoughts that you're having, you can greatly decrease the amount of peace that you're currently experiencing in that moment. Actually, you almost always stress yourself out by thinking. Your thoughts, on the other hand, are not good or bad. They just kind of spring up from out of nowhere. Thoughts are the random bursts of inspiration, ideas, strategies. Thoughts are where we create from. And then thinking comes after that. And that's oftentimes where we psych ourselves out of following those dreams or ideas or strategies. Like me, for instance, deciding to start a YouTube channel. It took me so long to film the video because of thinking about what could go wrong, what people would think of me, if I was even good enough. That's where I fell short. Thoughts create. Thinking destroys. When we start thinking about our thoughts, we start casting our own self-limiting beliefs, judgments, and criticisms on thoughts that are actually God-given. That's why it's so important to act on your excitement right away, because you lessen the chances of your doubts, fears, and judgments getting in the way. And if you don't know how to tell whether or not you're thinking or if you're just having thoughts, an easy way that I like to tell is by acknowledging how I'm feeling in that moment. Remember, thoughts create. So they're expansive, they're freeing, they make you feel good and inspired. Your thinking destroys, so that's going to cause you to feel anxious, doubtful, fearful, and so on. Your feelings are going to be the easiest way to determine your current state of thought versus thinking. Okay, so now that we figured out why thinking is causing us to suffer, let's talk about how we should go about feeling good and thriving in life. Okay, based on everything we've already discussed, you probably assume that the cure to suffering is to focus and dwell on the good thoughts rather than the negative. But actually, the answer is much more simple. You don't have to try to feel good and be happy and free and at peace. That's actually our natural state of being. When we're first born and we come into the world, we don't know anything about life. We don't worry about the future. We don't second guess how we look. We aren't insecure. And as long as we're granted the basic necessities like being fed, sheltered, and physically safe and healthy, then we're constantly at peace, present in the moment, and content. Even if you think back to a time when you were having the most fun ever, you'll notice that you weren't really thinking about much at all. Like being on a roller coaster. You're not concerned with the problems on the ground. In that moment, you're just a big ball of laughter, joy, and adrenaline. You're in a state of no thought. So no, you do not have to be thinking to experience positive emotions. In fact, the reverse is true. The amount of positive emotions we feel in the moment is oppositely proportional to how much thinking we're doing at that time. The less thinking we're engaging in, the more at peace we are. Being present in the moment and focusing on whatever's going on right then and there leaves room for creativity and positivity to spring forth, which over time is going to create a more happy life experience. But I just want to be clear, it's not that we're trying to stop thoughts altogether. It's just that we have to get used to letting thoughts come and go. And it might sound easier said than done, but the good thing is that just by being aware, you're going to be better at this. So the next time you're experiencing any negative emotion, pay attention to what's going on in your mind at the moment. We can only ever feel what we're thinking. So if you're having anxiety, take a second, acknowledge your thoughts, assess the potential threat that your mind is trying to alert you of. And if that scenario is not happening in that moment, then allow it to float away. Once you become conscious of what's going on, you're going to naturally start to detach from the chaos that is your mind and return back to the present moment. Remember, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, so we won't always be able to be in a state of no thought. Like, we're not gonna always be at peace. However, coming to this realization allows us to snap out of it and not take everything so seriously. Appreciate the balance of up and down. It's all a part of the human experience, and at the end of the day, we're only here for a short amount of time, so just relax and enjoy it. Try to lean more into the journey of life and surrender to the flow, because like, life is just so much better when you experience it that way versus trying to be in control and being stressed out and worried all of the time. Like, it's not a way to live. And speaking of relaxing, which is a natural byproduct of becoming aware of your habit of overthinking, it's important to remember that you're not going to be used to it at first. And one thing about humans and the body, we want to be comfortable, and to be comfortable is to be familiar. So when you first begin to drift away from this old, stressed out, overthinking version of yourself, your body may start to react in some odd ways, which I like to call the ego death. Your ego is your current identity. It is the part of your consciousness that's responsible for many of your habits and your ways of thinking and moving and going about living your life. Your ego is a big part of the reason why you tend to overthink now. So when you try to change that, it's gonna fight back. You gotta think, you're threatening its very existence by forcing it to stop doing what it's comfortable with or used to doing. And when you threaten the existence of the ego, it's going to go into survival mode, which means it's going to do whatever it can to shock you back into a state of being safe or familiar, aka self-sabotage. The ego, like the mind, is not concerned with thriving. It's more so concerned with survival. So whatever it can convince you of to get you back into an old habit or way of thinking or whatever the case may be, it's gonna do it. But the good thing is that when you become aware that you're being tempted to backslide into an old habit or way of thinking or whatever the case may be, that's how you know you're on the verge of a breakthrough. You just got to keep going and kind of force your way through the fear, self-doubt, self-sabotage, and break through that barrier to the next level. As long as you can do that, you got it. So congratulations in advance. Okay, y'all, I want to leave you by saying, remember that there is no right or wrong way of living. Regardless of society or culture or anything else, we are all individuals on our own journey that lead to our own destination, not anyone else's. Everyone is going to have their opinions, but the goal is not to live for external validation. Plus, other people are not going to see what you see anyway, so who cares? Remember, people aren't living in reality. They're living in their own version of it. They may assume that what they think is true, but remember, if something is true for one person and not true for another, it's not universal truth. It's personal perception. When we start trying to live for the world, we start overthinking. And when we think, we pull ourselves further and further away from our God-given purpose. The only thing that matters in this life is being close to God, cultivating a strong relationship with Him, and trying to live according to His will. God is intentional. He knew all of us before we were even planted in our mother's womb, which means He intended for you to exist in this moment right now. He put you here on purpose because there's a mission that He needs fulfilled, and you're the only person that's able to do it. Think about how special that makes you. When God considered His perfect will, He looked at you and saw perfection. So don't waste time second guessing yourself. Don't bother looking for validation elsewhere, because the Most High God already determined that you are more than enough. I love y'all so much. Thank you for watching. I know this is kind of like so strange. I'm in the car, but this was the best way for me to film right now. Obviously, the more used to YouTube I get, it's gonna be upgrades and so much to come. So yeah, the journey is just beginning. I love y'all so much. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and share this with somebody that you feel like needs to hear it, because I'm praying over this message. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for all of us that we can just break out of our current selves, and step forward with authority into the people and identities that God intended for us to be. So also shout out to God for sponsoring this video and getting me out of my head and finally sitting me down and being able to film this video, because it's been like 3 weeks since I said I was going to do this, and I'm finally doing it because why not? I'm only here for a short amount of time, and who cares what anybody thinks anyway? Yeah, so thank you so much, guys. See you in the next one. Katrina.